Oh, you texted her? Do you have a phone off the hook? Oh, so I can't.
Morning, Ron.
Morning.
Morning. I have kind of a funny setup this morning where my mic isn't working, so I have to call in on the phone. I probably need to do an update or something. Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Oh, good. Can Jason hear me? Oh, see? Okay, that's so funny. So I can see you, Jason, but we can't hear you. Maybe you're having the same thing I was. I'll drop in the call-in info in case anyone wants it. Hold on a minute. I think it must be like a new Zoom update that has to be made that I haven't done yet. There's no time for that. We were just saying there's like some people are having a hard time getting on with Zoom, like Zoom finding your microphone. So I had to call into the meeting. Is anyone else having that problem, do they think? You can talk and tell you if you're silent.
Someone I was meeting with yesterday had that problem.
Oh, okay. Well, yours is working. Up with the
I'm
times.
surprised mine works. I usually have to ask for help getting started.
You're all good. Great. Okay, we'll just give folks a couple minutes to come in. Hi, BC. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, Adriana. I'm glad to be here.
I'm really thrilled to have you. Thanks for coming.
Of course.
Good morning, everyone. This is Peter LaCourte here from Pacific Union College in Napa County. I got a call in for the first part of this meeting, so this is me on the 1071 number.
Okay, Peter. Great. Good morning. I'll change your name so we remember it's you.
I'll switch over to Zoom at one point, but I have to make a phone call right now.
Okay, no worries. Morning, Kim.
Let's do this meeting anyway. How you doing, Adriana?
Good. Doing great. We're all working through Zoom things. Technical glitches. It's
How everybody doing today? Yeah, good to see folks. We have about 11 participants so far. Maybe give it a minute or two as we get through the glitches. For those who don't know me, I am Kim Batchelder, and I work with Ag and Open Space District, and I'll be facilitating today. We'll give folks a minute to kind of click in here, and away we go.
Right.
I'll flash the agenda so you guys have a sense of what we're going to be talking about today. Oh, so Adriana, can you give me a hand on that? I need to share my screen. There we go. All right. So not showing up.
Right.
right, there we go. So we're going to start off with our general updates. And actually, do you want to start with funding? Adriana, is that your thoughts? Or should we jump into general funding?
You know, it was Dee's idea at one point to put this up at the very top, and I'm fine with whichever way it goes. But yeah, we could start off, I guess, with some updates. The only update I really have is that we applied for money from the Catalyst Fund, which is this national nonprofit that supports groups that are doing landscape conservation work, and especially like networks of groups trying to conserve landscapes. And so I thought, you know, I've been encouraged to apply for the coordinator position for the Forest Working Group. And it seems like a really good fit, but they had like over 70 applications and only could fund 15 of them, and they could not fund us, I think probably because they felt like we weren't in need enough. So I'll be looking for other funding in 2022 to keep the coordinator position going. But yeah, that's my update. And I guess, you know, if anyone else has updates about like grants they received or anything else that's up for them.
That sounds good. I could give a quick report out on the vegetation management that's being led by Ag and Open Space. I think I've shared this with you all in the last couple of meetings, is that we've been able to fund 20 different grant projects as of the end of the fiscal year. And so that's to the tune of about $3.77 million across the county. And it was really quite an interesting representation of NGOs to CAL FIRE projects across we did a pretty good job on having geographic distribution across the county. And then the variety of proposals were quite interesting as well. Everything from education to vegetation management on the ground. So then there was also in July, the board approved the moving on with 7 conditionally approved projects and funding those. But those are conditionally approved because they didn't quite meet the CEQA parameters that were required by law. And so they're going to move forward with what's called a California vegetation treatment plan for that area. And so that's going to take some time, and some funding was provided to permit Sonoma to be able to develop a Cal VTP for that particular area. And so Robert Aguero can speak more to that as they start to ramp up their staff to be able to address those types of concerns and lead the VTP process. So that's about as much as I can report out right now. Oh, and then there's also the grant program, vegetation management grant program coordinator position that will be, Ag and Open Space will be interviewing for that position next week. And so we'll see how that goes, and hopefully have someone officially appointed to that position as probably the front part of September. Okay. Any questions?
Question?
All right, go ahead, Caitlin.
Do you think there's any chance of that fund opening back up for applications sooner than later?
Yeah, I think that's the game plan, is to keep this thing moving. The next priority would be the conditionally approved grants, and then we would open it up for another cycle of funding. But we want to focus on that next batch to keep moving forward.
So there's
timing wise, I'm not really sure what we can, no one's committing to the next timeline, but the anticipation is to keep moving on these pretty quickly so that we can get more projects funded and move forward with those. We'll probably be hosting a series of workshops to let people to get a better sense of what the grant's purpose is, and then some lessons learned from the first round so that we can be able to share those with other prospective candidates for grants. That will also help with clarifying exactly how, for instance, this CEQA qualifications, how that's been a barrier for some projects, and maybe learn, maybe dial in on some of the reasons that those projects can't move forward. So that will hopefully be helpful. And again, we'll lay out a series, once official coordinator is provided for that project.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
And maybe this is you, maybe it's Robert, but do you have an idea how long the VTP process might take?
Robert, do you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. So I can give just like general ballpark for any VTP project. So really what it does is it cuts out a lot of the public commenting, the noticing, and the for the county lease going to the board requirements for any sort of CEQA document. It still requires the same amount of project planning, really, that I think either a mitigated neg deck or an EIR would require. Like you still need to do your bio surveys, you still need to have your ARC surveys, your cultural consultation. So the VTP assumes that you've done all that. So that you've done this front loading of all your studies. And so we've been told by the consultants who developed the VTP was it's a 2 to 4 month process to actually like write the darn thing. And then get your any sort of like resource delineation in, like, your on the ground flagging of project boundaries and all that. But with these conditionally approved projects, we're basically starting from scratch, and we're in the planning phase right now. So we still need to get a lot of the surveys and the studies in.
Okay, sounds like it might be a little while. All right, good. Thanks for that sketch.
Can you guys hear me? Could I interject with a question?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much for the breakdown there, Ken, and for the good questions, Caitlin. I'm curious, in the first year of this funding, if since the shovel-ready projects are likely to be, I don't know if this is a bad assumption, but maybe the less technical of all the fuel reduction projects out there, for the ones that were approved, it might be helpful to see like kind of a breakdown on whether they're like community WUI projects or roadside projects, ridgeline projects, or home hardening projects. And it's really good to know that the projects that do require CEQA are like conditionally approved, so we could still get them on the table for consideration. Is that fair to say?
I think there's the program is new. It's brand spanking new, and so there's a lot of things that need to be ironed out, if you will. So to have greater clarity, we want to make sure that the people are crystal clear on what requires CEQA full analysis versus what would be qualified as exempt. There's a lot of questions there. I think that was the nature of the very first community meeting that was held about the grants, is like exactly what is exempt and what's not. And so that was one of the biggest barriers that the selection committee came across, is like, was CEQA appropriately applied or not? We had 95 proposals. I think I've shared that with you before. 20 were granted. And so that caveat of 7 conditionally approved basically said they were close on their CEQA, but maybe the project was not fully exempt. And so the idea of going forward with the Cal VTP was a solution to cover a larger area of appropriately designed projects that would make sense. And so I think we're in that process. We're really understanding what's going to be the best way through this. And then also working with the communities to have the best design. That I think was really helpful in the next batch, the conditionally approved, and that which was approved by the board. So we're working through this. We're having greater clarity. Staffing up is one of the biggest issues right now, is that Permit Sonoma was not ready to have the responsibility of a Cal VTP across a large area. So they need to staff up. They're hiring 2 people, hopefully by the beginning of September, to help Robert and John Mack at Permit Sonoma handle that workload. The Ag and Open Space does not have a full-time person designated to this yet. And so we're working through those issues. I think it's people just need to be a little bit more patient. And this is one thing that Ben Nichols has stressed over and over. We're not going to resolve this in a 3-month vegetation treatment program. This is a long-term investment. 25 million across essentially 3 years is going to help us, but it's not going to resolve all the problems we have with these things. So be patient with us. That's about the best thing I could say right now. Robert, did you have something you wanted to share?
No, nothing off the top of my head. I do wonder if it would be a beneficial thing for this group to maybe have like a little, at a future meeting, like a, I don't know, like a little 20-minute primer on CEQA for organizations and groups, if that would be something that would be beneficial.
Absolutely. I think that's super valid. And so I think that the idea, once the coordinator comes on board, is that we try to use all, I mean, just like our matching grant program, we do a really good job of getting the word out. How do we go through this process? What's the grant committee looking for, and that type of thing. So I think that's a great suggestion. This is, I mean, it's funny, now that I've worked in this role as coordinator for the last 3 months, it's so many times I've crossed paths with all the folks that are working on the forest working group. So it's exciting to see as far as the folks that are involved and those who are interested in this type of funding. But this is certainly a target group for us to be, for the grant program to be able to articulate some of the things that we're trying to accomplish on the ground. Okay. So I'm facilitating this meeting. We're already 15 minutes behind schedule. So I'm going to keep moving on so we can keep going. Are there any other comments on funding? Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Does anybody, I was just curious, I don't think Fred's on, but I was curious what might be said about Community Foundation and Rebuild North Bay. Or I mean, any of these others.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if usually Dee has a handle on both of those funds, foundations. Okay. And Fred certainly can speak to them, but I don't think either are present right now. So maybe we can go back to that one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on then. So let's do with general updates. Let's try to stick to about 30 minutes. We always tend to run over, so we'll try to stay focused. I'll try to be an agile facilitator. I'm going to go by my screen and unshare my screen right now so we can see everybody. And so, Ron, you are the lucky guy on my first panel. So, Ron, would you begin sharing your update?
Well, I'm sort of an alternative from Justin Wells, our forester. I get you or Jason Wells. Yeah. Jason Mills and Jason Will. But anyway, I'm here to pick up information. I don't have anything new. We're having our RCD meeting next Thursday, and I'll just mention what we did, and if there's any needs, I'll pass that on.
You're muted.
No. All right, here we go. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. Caitlin, would you like to go next, please?
Sure, I'll be really brief too. We are putting together the work on the resilient landscapes. We got some funding from the county Veg Management Fund for that, and hoping to hear that we got some more from CAL FIRE. So that's a partnership with Master Gardeners and Fire Safe Sonoma and others to help landowners with their defensible space. And other than that, I think I'll just say that we are continuing to work with a number of private landowners in Sonoma Valley on their wildlands and trying to advise them how to be ready for fire, but also be promoting biodiversity and water conservation and water capture. I'll leave it at that.
Arthur Dawson, could you report?
All right. Yeah, thanks, Kim. So again, this is gonna be very short. I'm working on the CAL FIRE project that many of you have heard about. And what I need right now is I'm looking for somebody like an intern or someone who'd be interested in doing some newspaper research online. So it can all be done remotely. I can pay $25 an hour, and it's probably around 100 hours worth of work. It could be a student, but it could be anybody who's got an interest in, it's not too complicated. It's a little bit tedious, but I'd be happy to hire somebody through the forest group if somebody knows of anyone. I haven't contacted SSU yet or the JC, but I will if I need to. But anyway, I'll give you guys first crack at some work, paid work, funded by CAL FIRE. So how's that? So
I think that sounds great.
and send me an email if you have any questions. If you want more details, I can tell you more. And sorry, I can't stay. Thanks.
That's all right. We appreciate that. I think one of the things we've always encouraged people to do is be able to share employment opportunities. And then one thing I think is really valuable is that for us to really quantify the amount of funding that we leverage. I mean, all of us are working on projects that are bringing in funding from different sources. And so it would be really valuable to maybe quantify both from a grant perspective or projects that are being funded by other sources that we're not familiar with, just so we have an idea of how these projects are getting funded and what the working group members are really able to accomplish with it. All right, so moving on, Jill Butler, would you like to report out? Are you with us? There you go, Jill.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Let's see. And I'm representing Butler River Watershed Council. Ron's been attending our meetings, so Ron, chime in if I miss anything. I did want to start by saying just here on my little 3-acre property, I had the county chipper crew out this past week, and any of you that aren't familiar with that and haven't taken advantage of that program, it's great, and it seems like they have more money this year. They came out within 2 or 3 weeks of when I signed up. They'll work up to 2 hours chipping, and yeah, it all just went particularly smoothly this year. So if you're not familiar with it, you can just Google Sonoma County Chipper Program and you sign up online, and it's a great resource available for dealing with slash disposal. At the Watershed Council, big news for us is we've kind of been picking up pieces after losing our wonderful coordinator 25 years, and we have now reestablished our nonprofit and tax exempt status, which lapses if you ignore the paperwork long enough. But we've got that straightened out. We're doing some stream reach and temperature monitoring on a fee-for-service basis, and looking forward to working again on a fee-for-service basis with Sonoma RCD, Ron and Jason on the project that'll start next year, I guess, that's called the Gualala River Collaborative. And it's going to be producing a management plan and getting public input and establishing some priorities for the whole watershed. So we're excited about that. That's all I've got, unless Ron has something to add.
Yeah, we applied for the grant. We were told we got it, and funding should be coming. Valerie said possibly October, late October, we would get funding, so we start working on the paperwork. So, and we'll be able to put the whole program ahead and share it with everybody.
That's great news. Thanks, Ron and Jill. All right, so moving on to BC, would you like to report out about what RCPA is doing, or you want to wait to our presentation?
Excellent. Hey, thanks, Kim. I'm glad to be here. I am new to the group. Either myself or our Director of Climate Programs, Tanya Narth, will be hopefully joining this call on a monthly basis. So just a quick update. Over here at RCPA, we are working on a number of county-wide climate action initiatives, really guided by our Sonoma County, our climate mobilization strategy. One of the major initiatives of that strategy is on carbon sequestration and ecosystem services. So we've been doing a lot of work and consultation with the resource conservation districts, with the Ag and Open Space District, with Zero Waste Sonoma, and with the county's climate team on how to move some of those projects forward, specifically kind of looking at areas for continuing to help develop carbon farming plans for properties where it's appropriate, working on compost applications on some ag lands to try for the carbon sequestration potential. And then also looking at both kind of rural forest land management issues, as well as urban forestry and urban tree canopy issues. So I don't know kind of within the range of this group whether that is even a topic that comes up here, but I wanted to mention it. And I think the only last thing I wanted to mention was on the terms of funding. We have been involved recently with a couple of small funding proposals that have gone in to the county's climate fund in consultation with the RCDs. And so we're working with Anna Yip as part of the county climate team within the CAO's office to try to move those forward. So, and other than that, I'm mostly here as an observer today and kind of just trying to figure out where our work fits into this kind of the mosaic of this group. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks, BC. We really appreciate you guys participating. I think a lot of those projects you mentioned will be very applicable to some of the folks that are working on that are on the forest working group. So you're very welcome, and we hope to see your other presentations by you guys.
Very good. Thanks, Kim.
All right, moving on. Gian, would you like to give us your update, please? Jean Chen.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Okay. The Ukiah Western Hills Fire Safe Council, we've just finished using a grant from the Community Foundation for roadside veg management. And it was really good. The only trick was you have to get every single landowner's signature, or you can't do management along their part of the property that attaches to the road. So that's something I'd like to work out more with my representatives from each of the roads. And we're also doing a very big push to have everyone have reflective green signage for their addresses. The battalion chief and Ukiah Fire Chief have requested that. As far as the Sierra Club Northern California Forest Committee goes, we're looking at different options. Different working groups are looking at options. I'm on the wildfire ecology working group, and so that put me in Sierra Club statewide utility wildfire prevention task force. And given the Dixie fire now, there's more impetus for getting PG&E to change from veg management to updating their antiquated infrastructure. And Judge Alsup is now becoming more receptive to that idea, thank God. And we in Ukiah are looking at creating, we have a municipality, so we are free from PG&E largely, except for one transmission line going through. We're looking at the city of Gonzales, who have created completely a separate grid and infrastructure from PG&E. So we're looking at possibly expanding our municipality to add more of the county in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jean. Let me see, Jason Mills is next, please.
Hey, everybody. As you might see by the little acronym by my name, I'm no longer with the Ecology Center, but nothing but love for the great organization and wonderful people of SEC. I'm now with some really good folks at WRA who I don't know if you guys are familiar with. They historically did wetland work. So they kind of specialize in permitting, and now they're expanding out to do design, engineering, and now with me contracting. So I think we're like a pretty valuable resource when it comes to getting technical projects off the ground. I'm kind of pitching us as like a one-stop shop for all of your technical project needs. So kind of just an exciting new outfit to work for, and hope to be of use for Sonoma County.
That's great. Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate that, and good luck with your new position. Devin, could you report out, please?
Hi, everybody. My name is Devin with Pepperwood Preserve. I just sent out a pile burn video to this group, and it's in Spanish. So hoping that that can be used for our Spanish-speaking community members. We're open to other ideas about creating some Spanish video resources. So if anybody has any other ideas or wants to collaborate, Pepperwood is open to those ideas. We also just finished thinning 140 acres of Doug fir encroachment in our oak woodlands. That was funded by EQIP. So thank you, Joe. Joe and Jeff just came out and checked out the property. They seemed pretty happy with it. And now we are in the process of implementing a fire break around that. And with our vegetation management plan with CAL FIRE, we're hoping that we can get that all burnt in a prescribed fire this fall with CAL FIRE. Yeah, that's our big updates.
Nice, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think everyone would love a tour of the work that you guys are doing out there.
Actually, thank you for saying that, Kim. In September, I'll send out a link, but Michael Globally, our long-term preserve manager, and I are actually going to do a forest health workshop where we'll be talking about some of the thinning projects we're doing in prescribed fire and fuels management, also oak woodland health stuff. So I'll send that out to this group later today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's great news. Judy Rosales, please.
Hey, good morning. Judy Rosales with the Coast Ridge Community Forest. I just have a few things. We're ironing out the final details to get our vegetation management grant started. We're pretty excited about that. We're doing some evacuation planning with the communities of Jenner, all of Cazadero, and that's 4 communities, the town of Cazadero, east, all the way to Austin Creek, all the way to 116. 3 ranches on Fort Ross Road and Timber Cove. We got our fire chiefs together with Marshall and some community members, Brooke and Shanti from Sonoma Land Trust and the Jenner Headlands, to talk about evacuation planning and bringing our communities together. So we have, we're trying to schedule 3 meetings in each of the one in each of the communities with Marshall, identical meetings, putting out the word of what's going on. He's going to be talking about fire. We'll be talking about what we're doing in the individual communities, and hopefully, get started and bringing all the communities together on the Fort Ross Road project. So we're pretty excited about that, and all of our communities talking to each other. And we are such a diverse area here, from the old families to the old time ranchers to back to the landers to the new people. So bringing all of these people together right now is pretty exciting, and we're all excited about working together. So we have that going on. As I'm sure everyone's dealing with right now, we're dealing with the water shortage. Everyone I know is getting water delivered. I thought we were okay until a week ago. I got a call from our land partners saying, hey, we're out of water. So of course now I'm on the lookout for more money for rainwater catchment funding. But in the interim, I just ordered some water tanks from Harmony, and there's a 6 to 8 week waiting period for those tanks. And what they also told me is that they have 45 tanks coming in right now that are spoken for, and every order, that price goes up. So when we put our first rainwater catchment grant together, we paid $1,800 a piece for the tanks. The second one we did with the RCD, they were $2,200. Right now, they're $3,036 per tank. So they're going up. So if you need tanks, order them soon. And then one last thing, we have a member who just completed a carbon farm plan with Sonoma RCD. They just got their plan back last week, and we're going to be talking to them about, implementing that plan and, how we can help, and, how the community at large can also help the community forest in getting, some of those resources together and working together. So we're pretty excited about that as well. And our community grazing program is, we're trying to work with our community grazer, on how we can expand that single landowner grazer to multiple landowners. And so we're looking into how that might work as well. So that's where we are. Thank you.
That's fantastic, Judy. We really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing out there on the coast. It's and I think the collaborative that you guys are working on is just phenomenal, and really I think is the future of how we need to collectively manage these resources. And what you guys are proposing really is a lot of fun to consider how to replicate that in other parts of the county. All right, so Adriana,
one last
go ahead.
thing.
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to say one last thing on that, Kim. I think what you're saying is true. And this multi-community planning for evacuation, the multi-community planning that went into creating not only a Fort Ross Road project, but the other, the expanded project, speaking to what Jean was saying, getting all those landowners on board was probably one of the hardest things. And then we got a system going, an online system where people just had to go to our website, sign up, sign the agreement, and it took time, but it really has been exciting and rewarding to have personal contact with all of these landowners who are now just buying in, easily, because unfortunately the Myers fire came too close. And but in this community planning with multiple landowners, I will say getting all the landowners on board is probably one of the hardest, was one of the hardest things. And I'm so pleased that it came together as, as easily as it did, and continues to come together. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Judy. Adriana, would you like to report out?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, great. So at the Goldridge RCD, we are partnering with Sonoma RCD and other area RCDs on the North Bay Forest Improvement Program, which is I've talked about it in the past, it's a kind of a CAL FIRE FIP style reimbursement program. And spring we had our first round of applications received. And this fall, we're going to do another round. So those owners and managers who have forest management plans prepared and are interested in applying for funding to implement their practices can apply to the North Bay Forest Improvement Program. We just had a workshop on a few weeks ago, August 4th. We had a workshop that explained how to put in an application in case any of that was confusing, and that has been recorded and put online. I should share that out with all of you so that you have it. And we'll keep doing, I think we will have at least another 2 rounds, so one in the spring and one in the fall of next year, dispersing these funds. So, yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Jason. That's all.
That's great. Thank you, Adriana. Joe Teal from NRCS.
Hey guys, not too many great updates. Just the only thing that I have to say is that we're just almost ready to start announcing who was funded for the Eclipse CIC program. Hopefully we'll have those answers here pretty soon. I'm actually looking at the ranking and there's quite a bit of competition out there, but hopefully Sonoma County's got some good ones. That's all for us.
Great, thanks, Joe. Appreciate the comments. It'd be great to get some more, maybe a short presentation on the type of funding you guys are able to provide soon. But maybe we can table that for another time. Chris Jasper from Circuit Rider, please.
Hi, everybody. So we're doing a lot of fuels work. We're boots on the ground. So it's been pretty fun and pretty exciting to actually see the fuels being reduced and getting our young crew members trained up. We had a really big chainsaw training and we've been working all over the county. We are hiring, so we're 16 to 25. We hire pretty much anyone within that age range, specifically people who have some barriers to employment. But we're running into that same issue with one of our grants where we're trying to get the homeowner access part for roadside veg management. And it's been very challenging to get a hold of all the homeowners along Sweetwater Springs Road lined up. And if anybody has any advice on that, that would be super appreciated. We're about ready to go door to door. And I know some of those properties don't have doors because they're absentee landowners or undeveloped. And so, yeah, like I said, any advice would be great. That's about it. Thanks for having me.
Can I ask a question on that? Are you working outside the road right of way, outside the public right of way? Is that why do you definitely need the landowners to say yes?
Well, we're working within the right of way, but we've been asked to get homeowner permission.
Asked by who? I'm just curious about this because we have the same issue.
Yeah, so I believe it's Marshall is.
Oh, the fire people want you to get permission.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the transportation people at the county would say if it's a county road. Anyway, I don't mean to derail the conversation. I'm just.
Yeah, that would be TPW. We're in conversation with them as well about getting that access. Insofar, we're looking at just flagging the parcels that haven't gotten back to us. Anyone who does get back to us, they have been granting us access. It's just getting people to respond to either emails, phone calls, or snail mail.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Carleon, did you want to weigh in on that, or do you want to?
Yeah, just as a general rule, just about road right-of-ways, and Robert could probably either back me up or correct me on this, but there are roads in Sonoma County for which there is no deeded right-of-way, and you will really need to get homeowner permission on those roads. TPW kind of figures they can do 7 feet, or what they call ditch to ditch, without having to get permits or permissions for them. But a lot of roads, especially rural roads in the county, have no deeded access. So just beware of that. And so it's always a better idea to do what Judy's been doing and make sure and get all those homeowner permissions signed and ready to go.
Yeah.
Carleon,
Go ahead, Ron.
Carleon, the county does roads and we have a county road and they have never asked permission. And this is the county road department down here in Santa Rosa. There's no warning if they decide to come in and work on something. They just they dig a ditch. And I just wonder, are they required to notify?
If you're in Santa Rosa, that could be the municipality, not the county. I don't know. It depends on your road. But
It's a county road. It's not city limits.
If it's a county road and they have a deeded access, then they can do that.
Okay, so they don't need to
just
notify.
Depends. Like some roads have deeded access. Some roads have significant, large size deeded access, and some don't have any of them. So it really depends.
And Ron, if this is Jill, if I can just quickly chime in, it depends on your deed too. And I know just our little 3 acres, we're deeded to the middle of our road. It belongs to us. The county doesn't have a right of way. And I won't go into the story of when that came up, but I think properties that haven't changed hands recently, that's going to be the case. And I'm sure it's completely different all over the county, property by property, just to keep us on our toes.
Yeah, there's 20 houses on the street. It's less than a mile long. It's the only way out.
It's a case-by-case example, I think. And so I think we need to keep moving on, but I think we appreciate the feedback, Carleone. Robert, would you like to go next, please? Robert Aguero?
Sure. Yeah, sorry, I had to step away. I had to go help a customer at the front of the shop. I'm Robert Aguero. I'm a forester over at Permit Sonoma. Yeah, main work related to this group has been helping Kim in Ag and Open Space, as he mentioned, with the CEQA compliance for these other projects that have been funded. Also, working on our tree ordinance update, which I've mentioned a couple times, and we're still in like the very bare bones planning phase for that. It's gone to the board, we've gone some direction, done a little bit of outreach. We just we just finalized a contract with a consultant, cooperative extension, to do some high-level analysis for us that'll help us get some baseline data of like the state of the county's forest resources. And so I will be more forthcoming with that once we have more to share, but I don't think there's really been any change since the last time I shared about it.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Carleone, you want to report out from Permit Sonoma?
Yeah, just super busy, super glad we got Robert over there doing his side of the world, because it's been pretty busy in our world lately. First, Devin, we already posted your video up on our CWPP hub site. Thank you. It's awesome. That kind of stuff is great. And I am beginning to collect some data on some other stuff that might be needed in Spanish, so I'll reach out to you. Regarding the CWPP, we're still sort of finalizing input and starting to work on the processes that we'll have to do to get that annexed into the general plan, the hazard mitigation plan, and all this other behind the scenes stuff that we're working on. So that's all moving forward. We also have, we're sort of finalizing the processes we need to do to get some hiring done for a couple of other projects we have coming up, one of which is a hazardous fuels removal program, which is for hazard trees, especially in burned areas and so on. That will be, so that process is starting. So we're pretty busy with all of that. And moving down the road as fast as we can. Any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
That's great. Thanks, Carleone. Fred Ufrat, could you report out, please?
Hey there. I have nothing to report that I know of. I have been working on a bunch of open space properties and oh wait, I have a report. Today's August 19th. The Wallbridge fire was a year ago. And my world's been upside down since then, and I hope everybody else is doing okay, because we've all had a huge amount of work, and we're all in the middle of a learning curve here. And I really appreciate the open space folks and all of you folk pulling along with me here. We've got some good restoration going on Mill Creek, and let's just wait for rain. There you go.
Thank you, Fred, for again giving us that splash of reality that a year has passed since that fire and many others that have happened in this county. So we really appreciate all that you're doing for both ag and open space and the rest of the county. So thanks for the input on that. I have Earl Cummings on our agenda next. Earl, would you like to share anything?
I don't think I actually can. I don't work very well because I don't have a camera on my computer, and I'm holding my cell phone in my hand speaking to you. But the only exciting thing that I've been involved with is basically Susie has been very, very much involved in putting together a fire safety and earthquake preparedness fair at the Citrus Fairgrounds in Cloverdale. And you may have seen some parts of that in other organizations doing their work. So hope it's been seen. Thanks.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for that, Earl. We really appreciate the work of your wife and the things that you guys are doing there. Ivan O'Neill, could you please report out?
Hi, everybody. Good morning, and great to hear all the work that's going on around here. I'm just an interested community member at this point. I volunteer with Safer West County and Fire Safe Occidental, where some of our very dedicated members are doing some great work with neighbors to complete vegetation management near Occidental. I'm too much else to share, but I'm working on something and look forward to sharing more in the coming months.
And finally, thanks for that, Ivan. And please, Peter LaCourte, could you report out?
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is Peter LaCourte here. I am the forest manager for Pacific Union College here in Angwin in Napa County. I'm also on the Angwin Fire Safe Council, and I'm on the board of the Napa Communities Firewise Foundation. So my update is more from my Napa Firewise hat than my PEC hat this morning. We completed a countywide CWPP for Napa County about 6 months ago, and from that drafted a 5-year plan on how we're going to strategically treat our wildlands near our vulnerable rural communities over the next 5 years. The supervisors voted to approve year 1 of that plan a few months ago with funding coming from PG&E settlement funding. It was about $6 million. So now, money is really hard to come by, but once you get the money, there's a lot of work, per the conversations we're having this morning, that goes into actually implementing those dollars. And so now Napa Firewise is, we're so stoked that we got all this money, but now in terms of CEQA and landowner permission, we've got a lot of work cut out for us because the supervisors essentially want us to spend this money in 1 year. Like, we drafted the plan in a year-by-year basis, and now we're being asked to spend about $5 million a year, which, as you all know, is logistically challenging, especially when it comes to the CEQA consideration, because we've got these different projects, and some are more appropriate for a neg deck, some for full-blown EIR, some need a VTP or an exemption route. So, navigating all of those different routes with different projects is very logistically challenging, and that is, something that really slows down the work once the money comes in. That being said, it's an important aspect of it. And then also the landowner permission is a big aspect of that as well. Here at the Angwin Fire Safe Council, we did a mini fuel break for about $80,000. It was 30 or 40 acres in the spring. It took us months to wrap up like 15 landowner permissions, let alone the hundreds across the county that we need to be able to do this work. One of these issues is with a roadside treatment. So just kind of getting on that conversation from earlier, one of the main ingress-egress routes for Angwin here, we want to do a 100-foot wide shaded fuel break on either side of the road. So the way that we went about that was first we worked in the county right-of-way, just 10 feet on either side of the road, while we were then securing the landowner permission to extend 90 feet past that. So that was kind of how we got to work on the roadside project sooner rather than later, knowing that we would have to then finish up with those landowner permissions. So that's very much something that we're dealing with here in Napa County. You know, the supervisors and Napa County Fire are understandably very eager to see this money get spent, but I'm seeing a little bit of a clash in my world between fire personnel and politicians that are really eager to get work done, and forestry and planning folks who are like, whoa, but this takes time. Let's like pump the brakes a minute. And while we all know that this work needs to get done yesterday, we can't just magically make it get done tomorrow because we've got the money to do so. So that's a little update from my world and what I'm dealing with here in Napa County.
That's a great perspective. We really appreciate that, Peter, especially as we go through the very similar scenario where we're getting funding for different projects, but everybody wants it done tomorrow. And so that's really not realistic. But I think as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, just like we have to be strategic about how we go about this. And we're all doing great work. I think that's the beauty, I think, of the Forest Working Group is we see that collective action that's happening across all these different projects. It's really, really exciting to say. I'll jump off my soapbox and head back to the agenda. So,
no, absolutely. Kim, I felt a lot better hearing your update because you said so many of the issues that we're facing here in Napa County. So, I mean, this is the new reality of spending the fire mitigation dollars that are becoming available to folks like that are on this call.
That's right. Great. Caitlin, did you have something you wanted to share, or are you good?
Yeah, maybe I'll just jump in. I got a comment. I can't hold back. That was a big incentive for me to join WRA because I want to see these like super meaningful projects get off the ground, you know? So there are not too many outfits, as far as I know, that are set up to do that. So, you know, please don't hesitate to contact me if you run into these sort of bottlenecks as far as permitting goes.
That's called shameless promotion. What the heck, Jason?
But it's all for the greater good.
I can only tease you because I've known you for so long. So, all right. So, thank you all for those great updates. It's always, I think, this is 75% of the reason all of you show up on these calls to hear those updates. It's really inspiring. Moving on to our next report out on our steering committee. I wanted to remind you all that in July, Marshall Tuberville gave an excellent presentation on the 2021 fire season outlook. And for those who didn't get a chance to watch live, it is on our website, both the Forest Working Group's website, and we also have a link on the Ag and Open Space, just because it is so important for people to hear that message. The conditions are very stark, and it's just good to hear that and the science behind it, not just the emotions of it, but really stick to the science. Marshall always gives a great presentation. So I encourage you to visit our website and visit that presentation. We had, as the last count, this was a week ago, was 176 hits on that video alone. So it's worthwhile. And I think it shows the impact that what the Forest Working Group is promoting, more information, get out on the ground, that type of thing, I think is really positive. Let me see, then Adriana, do you want to report out on our ideas behind getting more people to the table for the Forest Working Group? You're still on mute.
You're right, sorry. Yeah, I think we'll talk more about this later in the agenda, but just as a quick, like 3,000 level foot view down on it. In our steering committee meeting, we talked about just how to bring in more diversity at the Forest Working Group, and one of those things was reaching out to our colleagues who work in climate change, like DC Caps, who's here today. So glad he could join, and we reached out to a few other folks too, just to keep them, to keep each other informed of what we're all doing. and what conversations we're having. And we also spent some time thinking about the ag community and how to reach out and get some good dialogue going with members from the ag community. So like I said, we'll talk more about that later in the agenda, but that's an overview.
That's great. Can you also address the brown bag presentation poll? I don't have that access to that data.
Yeah, we put out the poll asking Forest Working Group members what kind of topics they would like to hear from in the coming months, and we had 3 winners. And later in the agenda, we'll talk a little bit more about these topics and how we want to put together, a really robust presentation on them. But the first winner was just talking more about riparian forests, understanding them better. What is their fire risk? What are the allowable activities for management in them, and permitting? That's a whole bailiwick right there. Another topic we wanted to talk about was implementing large-scale forest management in Sonoma County, which is a little bit nebulous, and we're kind of wondering, like, what are people most interested in hearing about on a topic like that? So we'll piece that apart later. And then the third winner was learning more about prescribed burn associations, how they work, what their timing is, who does them, that kind of thing. So those are the winners.
All right, good. All right, and so one of the challenges that we always have with the brown bags, and I think it's a collective challenge for all of us, is that we usually have people who are familiar with the different people who are experts on a specific topic, and we really want you to take the lead on organizing these brown bags. Adriana can work with you on setting up the agenda, the Zoom and all that, all the logistics. But really we need people to step up and help us out with reaching out to the best experts on a specific topic. And so volunteers are always welcome. I think it's really helpful to have someone who just has a great professional contact with a resident expert and say, hey, look, we have this meeting once a month. We're having a session on whatever, climate change, what have you. And we'd really like you to speak and just give them a little bit of logistics so that we can bring those types of folks in. So brown bags are an essential part of what we do as a working group, and bringing in those experts helps us all really up our game on what information is out there and how we can best apply it on the ground. Okay, so please reach out to Adriana if you have experts that you think that can add value to the presence or the presentations that we have in queue, and that would be really helpful.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, and like I said, we can talk a little bit later about each of these and brainstorm like who might be a good resident expert in each of those topics. But then, yeah, like you said, having someone really wanting to spearhead organizing that presentation would be super helpful, and I'm happy to support.
Fantastic. Okay, so Carleon, you're next on the agenda. Basically talking about the county CWPP. Would you like to share?
Yeah, we're still moving along. We're integrating the comments that we got from everybody else, starting to integrate more comments that we're getting from other places, trying to beef up some of our equity, how we're dealing with underserved populations in that report, and how we're going to get that out. So we're working on that. We've been we have a good solid draft of a project listing and ranking tool, which I'm about to send out to the group of people that included, I think, Caitlin, who had to bail, but to kind of look at what that looks like. And Kim, I think you'd be a really good person to add to that discussion too, since that's sort of become your world. So that's moving forward. We initially had thought, the way we're hoping to have the draft done by early October, which would push our first public review meetings into smack dab in the middle of the worst of fire season. And so we initially had pushed those out until early next year so as not to have that conflict. But we're in the process of trying to figure out if it's possible to do those meetings at that time. Big concern is a lot of disruption for everybody out there, but especially in the fire community. So getting those guys to be able to be at meetings is going to be a huge challenge. And I've been dealing with a couple of folks from CAL FIRE lately who, after days and days and days, they contact me and they're bouncing from the Dixie now to the other fire. And so it's going to be challenging. But what we do want to do is get this thing done as soon as we can, because it's such an important part of the process of how we're going to start collaboratively prioritizing projects across the county. So I think we'll be making that decision probably by the end of this month. Is, are we going to push it forward, or are we going to accept reality and wait? That's our biggest decision we're trying to make now. And it's kind of a hard one because I really do want to get it moving forward, but I'm highly concerned about what that's really going to look like, where the rubber hits the road once everything starts catching on fire, which it's hopefully not going to do, but I think I can't make that assumption anymore. I kind of miss before 2017, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it's a whole different reality, isn't it, Carleon?
It's absolutely astonishing how, you know, and it's like, if you look at the 2016 plan, the 2016 CWPP, it kind of says, you know, holy cow, you guys, we're in a lot of trouble. We should really be paying attention. But the speed and ferocity that that change has taken place in has even blown my mind. And I'm the guy most likely to stand up and go, the sky is falling and on fire. So it's really an enormous change. And someone said earlier, you know, this is an enormous project and we can't fix it in a year. And kind of the way I look at it is, you know, it took us like 150 years to really create this problem. And we're not going to fix it in 5 years or 10 years. It's going to take close to 150 years. And, you know, I think one of the things, I just heard a comment the other day from someone who was at a meeting at the state level, and this kind of rocked me back a little bit, but I think it's highly relevant. And the comment was, you know, we don't need to figure out anymore how to work in live forests. We need to figure out what to do with dead forests, because in 10 years, that's what we're going to have. And that sort of, I hadn't thought of that before. But, you know, if you look at Sonoma County in 2017, we hadn't had a fire, a big fire. We'd had a few, but nothing major for 40 years. And now we're working on half of the county in that 5-year span. So I think we really do need to all start thinking of that in a different way and do everything we can do to fix a very long, very difficult project. So yeah, please contact me with any thoughts.
Jason, I think you have a comment, and then Fred.
I just wanted to say, you know, there's the fire, fuel, and the vegetation management issues we're facing, and then now you layer the drought on top of it and all these water. And I mean, these trajectories aren't going to change. So yeah, looking at burned forests with next to no water in them. I mean, yeah, it's some dramatic stuff we're dealing with.
It's, you know, I remember when I first started doing this work in 2000 or so, I was at a meeting and there was a woman who stood up in this meeting and said, in 100 years, the ecology of California is going to look like Baja California. And I remember coming home, looking out over 900 miles of big green trees thinking, there's no way that's going to happen that fast. Well, now I think it's going to be faster.
I mean, I just think we have to start considering these water issues, which don't necessarily intuitively lend themselves to vegetation management, but they do directly interlink. So, you know, we're seeing it right out there right now. So, yeah, I mean, that's a whole new direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, my comment is instead of, obviously there's going to be a lot of fire, obviously there's going to be a lot of dead forests, but inside every dead forest is a living forest. And we cut down all our trees after the fire last year. Now we have 6-foot tall redwoods. We have 8-foot tall oaks and maples. And my dedication is to growing the next forest. And as you know, Carol, even after a fire in 1978, your neighborhood came back pretty well. It was adjusted, but I think our question is not just how do we deal with the fires, but how do we grow the next forest in terms of soil management, in terms of species selection, and in terms of soil conservation to move on, because we can't just abandon California.
Yeah, and my fear that I would love to have a long chit chat with you about, Fred, is how long are those redwoods going to survive in what appears to be a terrifyingly changing climate? And that, you know, those are, I'd love to, let's sign up for a,
let's do that, and remember, the climate's not done changing. We can be in the tropics soon.
Yeah, I mean, from the restoration perspective, trying to keep these things alive in the dead of summer with you know, all people fighting over refilling these water tanks out there, and like Judy's saying, they're going up, and I mean, we got to get rainwater catchment going on at these restoration sites. You know, there's a lot to consider.
All right, well, thank you for that report out, Carleone, and we hope to keep on tap on the things that are progressing with the CWPP. It's a moving target, and we totally get it, but yeah, as best as we can, we provide the information, we try to bring it together and give us some marching orders as things continue to change. So let me see. So next we have our a check-in with our 2-year work plan activities. And so I'm tagged to lead this, and I'm going to rely on everyone's input on this. The idea is that we really want to try to figure out a nexus between what the forest working group is trying to advocate for, i.e. healthier forests throughout the county, with the agricultural community. And they're not mutually exclusive at all. In fact, that's, as Fred always points out, is behind every healthy vineyard, there's a beautiful unhealthy forest. And so I think it's important that we understand what are some of the issues that landowners who are working on agricultural production have in common with our group's efforts in trying to create a protective or a healthy forest throughout the area. So I want to kind of lead us in a conversation and a dialogue about how to maybe organize some type of event where we can provide a comfortable venue for that discussion to happen. Who should be invited, who would be interested in showing, sharing with us some of the activities that they're doing, either on their agricultural establishment or in the forest that includes agricultural production. There's a lot of ways we can go here. And so I'm gonna ask Adriana if you have any other suggestions about how we should kind of ramp this up. Are you still on mute again?
Oh, sorry. No, I thought that was great, Kim.
Okay, great. So, so some of the things that we've talked about is kind of defining what the purpose of the meeting would be. And so some of the questions that we've kind of highlighted are, for instance, what threats do farmers face from forests, such as insect habitat that would threaten a vineyard, such as the glassy-winged sharpshooter? How do farmers manage these forest threats? Do they just try to eliminate the forest, therefore eliminate the bug population? That's the worst case scenario. How can we work with those farmers to identify ways in which they can manage their forests in a more healthy way that would reduce the bug count? So what education do farmers want when it comes to managing forest lands? I think this is one thing that we came up in our steering committee meeting, is that oftentimes The vineyard managers are required to manage the forest that's around their vineyards, but they have no idea how to do that. And so that's not their area of expertise. So maybe there's an opportunity to create a greater education of vineyard managers so they have a better idea of what are some of the key things they can do to manage their forested resources that would enhance. Maybe it's going to be capturing water. Maybe it's going to be protecting from wind erosion, or in some cases, it's providing a greater sink for water resources that will ultimately provide more water for the vineyard. So I'm just tossing out examples here. And then another suggestion was what incentives exist to support forest management activities in the context of agricultural areas as well. So that's just kind of a short list, but does anybody have any comments or ideas about where we should take this discussion? Is this something that really people are motivated about?
One of the other things that has come up in discussions that I've had is ranchers who graze have huge fields of very tall, in the fall, very dead grass, which they need to save for grazing purposes, but which nearby homes view as a threat, and how to come up with solutions that work in both of those contexts. This has come up a lot. For example, picture the area around Sonoma State University, where there is still a lot of active grazing, but it's a very densely populated area. And how regulations work in those areas. Sonoma County Chapter 13A, which is sort of defensible space for local responsibility areas and unimproved parcels, has an exemption for agriculture. So agricultural properties are not addressed in 13A.
That's a really interesting point. And I'll share with you all, one of the things that ag and open spaces really struggle with has been greenbelt spaces, where we're trying to advocate for farming activities on the fringe of these communities, such as Rohnert Park. And we've had huge negative feedback on that effort, where we tried to do an incubator farm model on a property near Rohnert Park, and there was just such a clash of this urban rural interface, and it was just there was a lot of issues there. And I think maybe one of the nexus we could use is, and this is not really forest management related, but is that nexus of fire management. So if the ranch can be, or the grasslands can be managed in a way that's more fire friendly and maybe working that buffer zone, your urban interface would be less threatened by that type of activity. But that might play out in a forested landscape as well. What if we were doing, I could imagine if Jenner Headlands had communities closer to it, prescribed burns would be much more controversial. So maybe there's some lessons learned about how to work with these groups. Peter, I imagine, would have some great examples of that, where their forest activities come somewhat close to the college campus and things like that. Have you had a lot of pushback on some of the things that you guys are trying to do on your forests?
I'll tell you, in the modern age of wildfire, I haven't had a lot of pushback on my vegetation management activities. It was my prescribed fire that I had planned in February. The Napa County Fire Chief was literally on the phone with me that afternoon saying, Peter, we think this is going to make Angwin a little too smoky. We don't want you to move forward with this prescribed burn. And I'm saying, well, people are concerned about the smoke because of our fire problem, which I'm trying to fix with this prescribed burn. So yeah, that was definitely an issue.
Nice. Yeah, good. That's a good comment. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Judy. Didn't see your hand.
Well, right now what we're doing is I'm working with 3 of our vineyard owners who want to apply for the forest improvement program. And they've been out working on our community work days, removing vegetation. They've offered equipment. And so we really started involving them. We do have one vineyard owner on our board who has also been helping with the reach out, with the outreach. So by bringing them the forest improvement program and, offering our assistance in helping them manage their forests, I think that the word of mouth from that also is helping bring in some of the other vineyard owners who have been active participants in the last 2 grants that we applied for, and did outreach to other members of the community. And now we have them as as key people as we move these grants and these grant projects forward. So involving them in what we're doing, we're also assisting them in helping to manage the forests around their vineyards through the forest improvement program.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate those examples. I think one of the things we've really tried to accomplish with the Forest Working Group as a whole is really highlighting those community efforts, and with the ways in which the Coast Range Forest has been able to get collaboration from a wide range of landowners has been instrumental for its success. And so again, how do we replicate this? This is a great opportunity to share the experience of 1 or 2 or 3 vineyard owners out on the coast with other landowners, other vineyard owners, so they really get a sense. They need buy-in in some ways. And so I think that's a really great example. Thanks, Judy. Jason, do you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think just like kind of dovetailing off our previous discussions, I know the Napa Rutherford Restoration Project got a ton of buy-in just from getting a few big vineyard operators on board. Then it kind of escalated from there. They got support down the whole reach. And that's actually what we've seen on some of these fire recovery projects, getting back to getting clearance on the roadside work. It's almost better to go after whoever's leading that community. There's usually one person who kind of oversees the road, who kind of checks in with all the neighbors, even the vacation owners. So we had more success just going straight for whoever's speaking for the community, and they have everyone's contact information. So that's one field. And then the other thing I wanted to go to is like what the wildlands are perceived of out on the vineyard lands, right? For the longest time, the vineyard operators look at those wildlands, oh, that's sensitive habitat, we don't go in there. Now all of a sudden the glassy-winged sharpshooters moving in. Okay, now we'll start managing the understory for invasive species. Now what's going on is they're looking at all that wild vegetation as a fire threat. And now they're getting some incentive to get in there and start going after it. Now denuding the streams is going to hamper all of our water conservation efforts. So, I mean, finding that balance is why it's considered sensitive habitat, why all that permitting's in place to begin with. So all this stuff is connected. And that's why I think it's so important that we have these conversations with the Forest Working Group, because I don't know how else we're going to figure it out,
One of the most important things with the vineyards too is tying them into community fuel breaks, right? As we're starting to plan for these community calming zones or fuel breaks or whatever we're calling them, because vineyards can burn, but they typically don't. And clearly the vineyard owners have a vested interest in losing as little of their crop as they can. And the other concern that I'm hearing more and more and more, and this is something that is way bigger than any of us can solve, but they are looking at economic devastation from smoke on their grapes. I was talking to someone the other day who lost considerable product 3 years running, and they're very concerned about what happens this year if I get smoke taint again on these grapes. So, they should be very willing participants in any discussion.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't think about that connection with how the smoke is contaminating some of the vineyard production. So that's a really good incentive. Ron, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I remember about, close to 30 years ago when we developed what's it called? The Hillside Erosion Control Ordinance for Vineyards. We developed that handbook, and now it's very well taken up by, well, it's county ordinance now. If you put in a vineyard, you have to comply with the rules. And we also, the RCDs all have the Land Smart programs and they have one for grazers. And I used to have a house in a homeowners association near Bennett Valley, and everybody complained about the weed eaters every spring, but it was for fire protection. And they got a guy to bring his sheep out there, and everybody's happy with the sheep. They graze for about 2 weeks, and they cover all of the hillside that used to be 2 weeks of weed eater noise, all day long. And they did a great job. I know a few people that they brought their animals around, goats and sheep mainly. Cattle are a bigger animal and it's more difficult, but for contract grazing, I think a lot of farmers or ranchers who have stock and they're running out of feed like this year. Of course, you got to bring water when you bring animals to do veggie control, but in the spring, it's easier to have water and get those weeds down just when they're getting ready, almost ready to bail. They're the most nutritious. And if we opened up or maybe talk to the Farm Bureau, talk to grazers and said, look, if you have, because I know people that are selling their stock because they don't have water to water them, and there's no feed. Feed has gone up in price, but they want to graze some of their animals, but there are risks grazing because I know one guy who lost 4 or 5 goats because right around Easter time they disappear, those little goats, the babies. So it's not always coyotes.
All right.
But nobody rustles a cow, but they can get out and get hit by a car or something, and so do horses. But I think through the Farm Bureau and maybe working with the RCDs, we could. I used to be on the Vineyard Technical Group for the Sonoma County grape growers, and we would bring in lots of speakers about things. And like the Pierce's disease, there's a whole list of plants that don't carry Pierce's disease, but are native plants. And if you could do without a few serious vector feeds for the food for the vectors, usually along the stream bed, exclusionary fencing to keep stock out. And I know EQIP gives grants for exclusionary fencing to preserve the riparian area. So there is stuff out there, but maybe if we get some outreach money, we can partner with the Farm Bureau or the grape growers and have a few events just tailored for them and listen to their comments.
Yeah, I think that's a different option. I think what I found, and I usually stress this with our steering committee, is that we really have to be careful about our collective capacity to be hosting a series of workshops, because we just don't have that capacity with the Forest Working Group. Now, the RCDs, Sonoma Ecology Center, SLT, Pepperwood, they can host different types of presentations, and collectively, maybe that's the direction we go. But I wouldn't want to advocate for the Forest Working Group organizing a series of workshops.
Yeah.
If we had a one-day event where we get a chance to hear a panel, I think that's more in our capacity. But that was kind of what the pitch was for this idea. Maybe some of the other ideas that we listed on the agenda is the data that we need. Maybe what are the key questions that we need to get answers for, such as how often is farmland managed by contractors instead of the landowner themselves? That's digging pretty deep. And how many forested acres are owned by agricultural landowners? That's again, trying to decipher a lot of data that, I'm not sure who's got the capacity to do something like that.
Yeah, for a land survey, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking we can share, maybe have a, part of someone else's fair or whatever, we have a booth, or we have a presentation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Judy, did you have something you wanted to share? And Jason?
I did. I just wanted to comment on, we were talking earlier about an ag event and reaching out to the vineyard owners, being someone who works with more of the small landowners, I would like to see an event like that focused on some of the small vineyard owners. I know it'd be very easy to get one of the big ones to host this event or to do something and kind of take a lead on it. But we have so many small ag producers that doing something on the ground with one of them, I think that's what I would like to see. I think it would be easier to look at them, and I was writing down the list of questions that you had. Some of these bigger vineyards and ag producers, I'm sure, could contribute a lot of value to an event like this, but I would really like to see it from the ground up with some of these smaller vineyard owners and other ag producers, as what we're dealing with out here on the coast. And I mean, and there are more, that I'm only speaking from my own personal experience. I think that I would like to see something like that.
I think that's a really valuable suggestion, that we really think about the scale. What's the, how much influence are we going to have on that very large vineyard owner? I mean, I think we've always had this clash. It's really interesting. I'll share a little bit of background of the Forest Working Group. There's always been not a clash, but just like philosophically, what is our best role from the Forest Working Group? And people like Fred and Jill are very familiar with this dialogue, but we've had at one scale, Sonoma Land Trust works on across the county and in other areas. The Ag and Open Space looks at large scale. But Dee's always been really a force of nature in reminding us that we have a really divided landscape. The forest holdings are across a very generally small parcels. And what Judy's advocating for is really spot on, that the parcelization that's happened throughout the county is really something that is noteworthy for Sonoma County. So if we don't look at that scale where vineyards have a portion of the property as well as forest landowners, that really, I think it really is tells to the point where we really need to address that community as well, and probably have a greater impact if we're able to convince more small landowners that have vineyards and forests on their property. But it's an excellent point. Let me see. So some of the other things that we brought up is like, who would be logical presenters? I mean, we have, for instance, Circuit Rider and the JC are all working on a fuels reduction training program. That would be something that would be super valuable to have in our presentation. I have in our notes, WRA is also working on how to permit fuel reduction work and those types of things. And I don't know, Jason, if you want to elaborate on that. But these are just kind of ideas of like, how do we get these different experts in certain elements to that, so that landowners get a chance to not have so much fear about the permitting process to get work done in their forest. I guess that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to chime in and just say that these vineyards have like a ton of resources, and all the harvesting all hits at once. So everyone's busy in the fall, but then the rest of the year they have all this staff to put to use. And I think kind of in the model of what River Partners has done with the Sacramento River water conservation and restoration up and down the whole Central Valley, we could try to incorporate some of that model to get the vineyard workers out doing the good restoration work. And then I saw Devin had some comments to make, so I wanted to make sure he got a chance.
Yeah, go for it, Devin.
Oh, I was just thinking that the combination of forests and vineyards is Shown Farm really pops in mind. They have staff that manage forests and staff that manage both vineyards too, and they I wonder how much they even talk and collaborate. And I don't really know anyone on the vineyard side at Shown, but just an idea if anybody has connections there. They seem like the perfect fit for this kind of conversation.
I know this guy who does a forest management class over at the JC. Fred, do you have any input on that? And then also, let me see. Yeah, so the JC has their training program, both for forest management and getting people familiar with what it takes to manage forested lands. Some of the, so we can think about, I guess the next question comes to like, what are the next steps? Who wants to take the lead on this? Typically, we get our best work done when a committee of 2, 3 to 5 are able to work together and pitch the idea of here's our next steps. Timing, if we're probably talking 6 to 8 months out. We try to want to hit, we always should be strategic about when we try to pull these off. We don't want to do it in the middle of fire season, nor do we want to do it in the middle of a harvest season for the vineyards, for instance. So maybe sometime in February or March would be a logical time to do something like this.
You know, just listening to this conversation, Kim, like one thing that came to mind for me was, do we want to invite a few members of the ag community to just talk with us about this idea and kind of like what they suggest? We could have a variety of, like Judy said, kind of like the smaller scale ag operators, and then a few of the kind of, bigger like Farm Bureau members, maybe just 2 or 3 people to talk with.
That sounds great. I think that's a really good idea, and just kind of do a little intel on what types of issues the Farm Bureau or other organizations, the grape growers of association, that would be a good contact. Ron, are your contacts there pretty active? All right. So yeah, I think it's a good idea just to kind of brainstorm on who we should talk to. We have an informal conversation or invite them to our forest working group and have a little dialogue. I think that's a good idea. All right.
Is there anyone who would like to volunteer to, invite those folks and get the conversation started?
I have a connection with one of our.
I would be interested.
Tony
we got Devin.
Tony from the Farm Bureau is on my CWPP steering committee.
Oh yeah, nice. That'd be great. Carleon, do you want to reach out to her and just kind of have a little chat about what would the Farm Bureau be interested in doing with us?
Yeah, can you send me kind of a synopsis of what we're talking about? Adriana, have you got bandwidth for that now or no? Okay.
Yeah, I can do that.
So I'll put it on my list.
All right, Judy, how about what were you going to suggest?
Yeah, and I would be willing to work on this as well with some of the outreach to some of the smaller vineyard owners here on the coast.
Great. And
so I mean, in the planning of that.
Okay, that sounds great. I really appreciate that. How about Devin? What were you going to say?
Oh, I have a connection with one of our neighbors at Medlock Ames, and they do a really great job of having conservation as a part of their mission statement. I don't know what their capacity is, but they have a forest manager on staff and stuff, and I have their emails, and they've come out and done some volunteer work with me. And this is that's coming part of their mission is conservation along with, organic grapes. So they seem like they might be a good person to be involved in this conversation, and what's convinced them that that's the right model to move forward. So I'd be happy to reach out to them and tie them into this conversation.
Great. So maybe we can kind of like provide a short synopsis of what we're thinking now. And then Judy, Devin, Carleone can share it with the different people that they think would be valuable for that conversation. And if anybody else has any other suggestions, maybe we send them towards Adriana that would be our collective group to set this forward. Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah, I was thinking, I've had some interactions with the new Sonoma Ag Commissioner. He's a bright fellow. I can try to get him involved. And yeah, there was one other thing I was going to mention on that. It slipped my mind. Come back to it.
All right, no worries. All right, so I think that's great. Let's wrap that conversation up right now and move on to our last activity, which was to really flesh out our brown bags. Adriana, do you want to take a lead on this one?
Sure, yeah. So this is, as you can see, we got 3 different topics that we want to prepare presentations for. Or, you know, so what I've done in the past is just like had one speaker come to talk about one thing that they are uniquely qualified to talk about, and they share that information with the group. But with the 3, and Kim, do you mind scrolling down a little bit? With the 3 topics that we identified for future brown bag conversations or presentations, it seemed like there might be more than just one person that we would like to have come speak. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on who would be a great speaker and what kinds of information you all want to learn about through each of these. So the first one is just about riparian forests. And all of the complexity that there is within that one area of our county, our landscape, I should say. So, you know, some questions that came up for us in our steering committee meeting as we were talking about this was we thought it would be interesting, not just, I should back up a second too and say that this would be a presentation that wouldn't just be good for forest working group members, but also for the public and anyone who is confused about what to do with riparian forests. And so, you know, sharing information about, you know, how flammable they are, like how do they contribute to fires? Is there anything that we can kind of demystify there for people? What management do they really need? Is it okay to leave them alone? Do they need a little help? What kind of help do they need? What kind of management is even legal? That gets into the permitting realm of things. Another question that came up was, you know, should large woody debris or small woody debris for that matter be left in the creek? Or should it be removed for fire safety? I think that's something that people are talking about. And we might want to clarify that as well. And then just more questioning kind of like along the same lines and getting, you know, just generally getting to know riparian forests better. What kind of species grow there? How do they contribute to the forest's ecology and the forest's health? What are their most like important features that we want to protect? So we came up with that like list right there. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to add that are kind of like topics of interest within this topic?
Yeah, this comes up a lot in my world with defensible space, because if we're out doing defensible space assessments, and Robert Aguero is my go-to guy on this if he's still on the call, but people, you know, if the inspectors come along and there's a riparian area near a home, that causes a lot of confusion and concern. So if that near home aspect of this could also be circled up in this discussion, I think that would be super helpful. And
absolutely.
Just, you know, getting the data. I know that after the last couple of fires, there was a lot of, I'm not sure true or not, comments that, oh yeah, the fire it wasn't even up here and it followed up these riparian areas and that's what burned my house down. And I think that there's I would love to see the data for that and really, really what are the fire risks in those areas from a firefighter standpoint, right? Their chimneys, they tend to be low and they can, you know, but because if they're moist, if they're not moist, what's the I would love to see some data on where are the real risks for carrying fires specifically in a riparian area, and how does that fit into riparian regulations and how we treat the vegetation and all that stuff.
Yeah, really good suggestions. That is great.
Yeah, I've heard exact same thing, that the person has said, oh, the fire went right up the riparian area. And right next to them, a house was saved because it was in the riparian area. And I went to the one that was saved, and she had to cut a few redwoods that were damaged. And I helped her with getting that taken care of. And she says, you know, if we weren't down in this canyon, in this cool area, we were saved because the wind could have gone the other way, but she thinks she was saved by the riparian area. But I know the proof for that, because but the guy that said they came up the canyons, he like you said, where's the canyon they came up, you know? And well, every canyon that went up and everything in between the canyons, it just depends where you're at. It's which fire and which way the wind's going. But I would say we can improve riparian areas, like get the, you know, invasive plants out. At least we could do that.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jason, and then Fred.
One thing I saw come up with riparian stuff is it has a lot to do with slope. Just like what Ron's saying, if you get a narrow canyon, the fire's driven up the slope, that's a whole nother ball game than if you're sitting in a valley where it's going to have a much slower residence time. And this came up when I was doing the fuel assessments for Oakmont, just exactly what Carol Leone's saying. We went out there with Paul Lowenthal from Santa Rosa Fire, and the citizens of the HOA of Oakmont are saying, we want this riparian vegetation out of here. And Paul Lowenthal is looking at the houses with dense shrubs in the 0 to 5 all around the house. For me trying to save your guys' houses, I'd really prefer you focus on that than the river right here. And so that was just nice to hear coming from a fire guy. So yeah, the word needs to get out.
Right. Fred?
You're here to what other people are saying about riparian areas. Up at the top, they can be chimneys. Down at the bottom, they can be safe. But let's also remember that they are the wildlife corridors. And whenever the riparian crosses a road, that's probably where the animals are crossing a road too. So they have to be managed for more than just fire safety.
I know people.
I'm going to interrupt here, Ron, because again, this is the reason we wanted us on brown bags. Like, this is why we do these brown bags, is because when we get a subject we're all pretty passionate about, we have a lot of great information. We want to be able to consolidate that, get the best information out, so that not just us, we're on the soapbox right now. I think everybody's understands the challenge we have. But now we got to get bigger landowners, or larger people to participate in these. And that's why we posted the brown bags, is so we can get the experts and refute some of the myths, bring up what our best management practices, and then get the word out and have it on our website, get it, basically blasted everywhere, so we have more consistent land management practices across the county. So thank you guys for your great passion. I love it. So, but moving on. So one of the other brown bags we wanted to discuss was the implementing large scale forest management in Sonoma County. And so there are some questions. Everybody, there were 7 votes in the poll. So our end isn't super rich, but I really wanted to see if we have an idea about what that exactly means. And if we can define the brown bag as close as possible, then we can really have a better idea about which experts would be the most appropriate for this type of discussion. So Adriana, do you have any background on the nature of that? I think there was some confusion in the steering committee on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think originally, actually, this was a topic that Devin brought up years ago when we started our list of like what topics everyone wants to hear. And he had a contact at the Buckeye Forest with the Conservation Fund who's working like on large forest management. They're participating in the carbon market. I think that was kind of like the original thought, which is still really interesting. And then I think without knowing that, we were interpreting like, what does this mean? Maybe we're talking about multi-property management, like Coast Ridge is community forest. I think honestly they're all forest, right? So it's just different mechanisms for ways of managing that land. So yeah, both are interesting to me. There's probably other angles too. So I'm just curious to hear from you all if there's anything in particular that you really want to learn about, or that you have a speaker that you're like, oh yeah, this person could talk about such and such. Sorry, just before I open it up, we also, I think it was Kim, suggested that CAL FIRE has a number of shaded fuel breaks that they're planning, they have funding for, and those are going to be cross-property. So how do they get those kinds of projects done on private property? That's another really interesting thing to dive into. And then we also have large acreage preserves like Pepperwood, or we have large acre production sites like Mendocino Redwood Company in the West County. So those are just some other ideas. Now I'll open it up for your ideas.
You know, I was I attended the Cal VTP site visits for West County, and I think it was really important for the applicants to hear what Ben Nichols had to say and give his firefighters' perspective on fuels management. And really, you know, it opened my eyes as well as to like, he was saying we don't want to put the funding toward the mid slope where the cost of defense is so much greater and the challenges to defend at the mid slope are so much greater than the ridge line. And that sort of like broad acre perspective on firefighting and veg management was really critical, I think, to some of the applicants as well as myself, and to spread that word about these priority zones. I think would be really important, just to spread that perspective to the average homeowner or the vineyard that, you know, maybe owns up to the ridge line. They may be looking like right next to their vineyard, which is mid slope, but they may not be looking up at that ridge line for access to, you know, a shaded fuel break or firefighters. So, you know, bring that in to a workshop or like specifically Ben Nichols, because the way he put it was really, really great. And the seriousness and his maps were really good as well. Yeah.
I wholeheartedly support that idea. Just like he and I was part of the same tour, and as well as Robert. We had a good discussion in the field, and I think it was pretty eye-opening for those landowners to hear that message, that even though they have, like, in many cases, they have large swaths of land that could be managed, it wasn't strategically the most important land to manage. So getting to Chris's point that there is a larger perspective, and CAL FIRE really holds the cards on that. I think the Fire Safe Sonoma also has a real good vision on some of the things, some of the priorities. And that's kind of what Carleone's doing with the CWPP for the county. Is like, we're really trying to help prioritize those lands. So I like that idea of maybe we can mix it up with that brown bag. We have a lot of diversity. I love the idea of having Ben Nichols give that perspective, but also I value what some of these other larger land owners could provide. This is, again, gets to that question about scale. Could we bring in someone like the Buckeye Forest to share this perspective of what they're doing across a large landscape? Jenner Headlands is another large landscape that what I always hoped the Ag and Open Space could do is develop these management models, and now it really comes down to what Pepperwood's doing, Jenner Headlands. These folks are being able to manage their lands, and then we can use those sites for learning, and that we can learn how to replicate, even if it's a small shaded fuel break. That lesson on Jenner or up on Pepperwood is really something that we can replicate at any scale, but we have to do it in the right way, in the right areas. So I think that's a great suggestion, Chris. Thanks for that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. Going back to, looking at the large scale, I'd like to talk to Brooke a little bit about this and the forming of our Sonoma Coast Collaborative and some of the issues or the challenges, dealing with multiple landowners on a large scale. Just what you were saying right now. I mean, I've been talking to Matt Green for years about the ridge lines, and I've talked to Ben about this as well, and Marshall, and the challenges of getting your landowners on board. Working with Brooke, and we did a tour up there to the Jenner Headlands, and it was amazing at how many people up there really weren't aware of the connectivity of the ridges up there, and that Cazadero Highway was right below, and the Muniz Ranches was to the west and the north, and and so being able to stand up there and look at all of that was eye-opening for some of the landowners. So, looking at large-scale forest management when you have large land holdings is one thing. Looking at large-scale forest management with multiple, I mean, we have over 100 landowners on board for our grant projects right now. And so, I think that there are some real challenges in trying to look at that at large-scale forest management when you're dealing with multiple landowners. And, I'd like to, as I said, I'd like to talk to Brooke a little bit, because we've been talking about this for about 2 years now, of the Sonoma Coast Collaborative. We just came together as the collaborative, formalize the informal talks that we've been having over the years. So, I think we could provide some perspective on working with multiple small landowners.
That's great. Thank you, Judy. I'm just kind of taking a time check. We have about 4 minutes. So I think we'll wrap this conversation up. Adriana, I don't think we accomplished our goal of having people take leads on these things. So can I ask folks to maybe first just raise a hand if they want to focus on, if they want to help organize the riparian forest brown bag first?
Kim, you could stop sharing so we could see all of everyone in their hands.
Yeah, good call.
And I like this.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so can I get a hand on whether you want to help participate in the riparian forest discussion, or that would be the brown bag coming up?
Can we have the idea of putting some seasonality to these topics?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so let's get the thematic folks who want to participate in that. Please send a note to Adriana and say, yeah, I want to work on the riparian forest one. Same deal, the large landscape. Let's go ahead and just send a note to Adriana and say, I want to help organize that one. And then we can kind of coordinate that way, because we're kind of running out of time here. There's 2 activities that are coming up that get to in the last brown bag we didn't discuss was prescribed burns and the burn associations. I think those are all super valuable. And so let's try to do more work offline to be able to do that. Judy, do you have a quick comment?
No, I was just going to type in that I'd be willing to participate in the large landowner brown bag.
Fantastic, thank you. And so finally, there's 2 events that are coming up next month. On September 11th, the Dirksons out in Mark West Watershed are sharing a field tour to get a sense of the impacts of the forest. I think Adriana sent around the email that Jim sent to neighbors and others associated with that area to describe kind of how the glass fire impacted their landscape. And Jim spent many years managing that forest, and there's some good lessons learned from that. So he is hosting a tour of his property on September 11th. The other activity that's coming up on September 25th is the Jenner Headlands is also offering a tour of their property to discuss how their shaded fuel breaks and prescribed burn program is functioning. And I've done that site visit. It's a great show. It's really, it's very educational on how these things work and how much effort it takes. So with that, are there any other parting words that people want to share?
Great job facilitating, Kim. Thank you. We're right at noon.
Coming down to that deadline. I'm always good with the deadline.
I'd like to participate, except I own a house in Weaverville and the town got evacuated, and I'm gonna have to get up there, and I can't plan my time very well right now.
No worries. We all appreciate that. So take a look at the website. We'll get more description about those field events and tours. And Adriana, I'm sure, is already on sending out the announcements for those site visits. Okay. So thank you all for your great participation. I really appreciate your showing up and participating today. You guys have a great day. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Bye now.